Hey, Dean here. Welcome to my journey. Everything I've learned along the way, I'm passing on to you. Today we're going to use effects to make our tracks explode. And what does that mean? Whether it be in EDM, pop, metal, folk, and gospel. That's folk and gospel, not... You've definitely heard a part of a track that has really hit hard. It's said to you, now is the time to dance, now's the time to headbang. Maybe not in folk and gospel, but working in conjunction with your composition, effects can really make your track shine. It's the difference between this and this. I'm using Logic Pro 10, and without further ado, let's get into it. Let's do this. So I'm using Apple EarPods just so that the camera doesn't pick up my monitors. That way I can still listen to what I'm... Don't mix on Apple EarPods unless you're using them as reference monitors. Anyway, let's jump in. First things first, I'm going to do an A-B comparison so that way you can hear what it sounds with and without the effects. I know I did that in the intro before, but this is just going to have a bit more context. So... I'm not recording the screen right now. I should start doing that. So this is it without the effects. Alright, doesn't sound too bad. Pretty punchy, but check this out. Okay, that's way better. Let me show you how to do it. As I said in the intro, this works with any genre. I'm just going to be using a metal song that I wrote in the past because I knew that it had a lot of effects in the project. So you can apply the same techniques to any sort of genre, even gospel. Alright, so we have a bass drop right here. We have a reverse snare. We have a reverse cymbal. We have a reverse cymbal that has a bit of a ramped speed up kind of effect. Kick and tom drum that I just accentuated the low frequencies of. And then that same effect with the high frequencies in and reversed. And then again with the ramped speed up effect. So there's a lot to work with. I'm just going to show you a couple examples from each of the categories. We have bass drop, we have reverse, and we have ramped speed up. I'm just going to show you one of each, and then you can apply the same technique to really whatever you want. You can do it with any sound effect, and it'll have a different kind of effect, and you can make it work. Anyway, so let's start off with the bass drop, a new software instrument. I'm just going to drag that down to the bottom and title it Bass Drop. And then we're going to also want a new audio track. Cool. And this will be our recording track. Make sure you pull down the volume on your bass drop channel because it's about to get loud. Open up a test oscillator and it's just going to start ringing right away. Let's turn that off. We want it to stay as a sine wave, but we want it to do what's called a sine sweep, which is pretty much a sine frequency that goes between two set frequencies. We have 20 hertz right here, 20,000 hertz right here, so if I were to show you that, it would sound like this. Let me turn this back on. Etc., etc. It does that over 10 seconds. But we want it to do the opposite. We want it to drop. It's a bass drop, right? Our starting frequency is going to be higher than our end frequency. I'm in the key of E in the song, so I'm using 81 hertz, which is an E. Well, 82.4 is an E, but for some reason this doesn't let you do that. Let's see if it actually... 82. Yeah, it doesn't let you do it for some reason, whatever. And I'm going to bring it down to, let's say, 20 hertz. Some people will say that 20 hertz will muddy up your mix. I've read some studies that say that just having the energy there actually emphasize whatever emotion the song has. So if it's a happy song, just having a lower frequency will emphasize that. You know what? It's science. I'm a music guy. I don't know the science behind it. Go ahead and Google that. So I'm going to do 20 being my ender because 20 is also an E, just in a lower octave. And cool. So now that we have our parameters of frequency set, we want to see how much time we want it to go over. So I want it to start right here on bar 83, and I want it to end right here on bar 87. So that's 4 bars, and that's, let's see right here, 3 minutes and 0 seconds, 8 seconds. Cool. So open up the test oscillator again, bring this down to 8 seconds, and bam. All right, so now we need to record that. How are we going to record that, you might ask? Well, let me show you, I might say. So we have our bass drop channel right here, and we're going to send this out. We're going to do stereo out and send it to a bus. It can be any bus, doesn't really matter. I'm going to send it to bus 10. And then our recording channel here, we're going to set the input to, you guessed it, bus 10. Cool. Now, pretty much, I'm going to open up my test oscillator again, hit record, and then hit the trigger. And bam, it's recorded. That may have sounded really muddy. It was because I forgot to turn off the original bass drop, so there's 2 bass drops in there actually. It doesn't matter if you hit it on time or not, because you can always drag it back like this. I personally think that it's a good idea to cut off some of the transients. It doesn't slowly introduce the bass drop, it just cuts the crap and gets down to brass tacks. So I'm just gonna nip that. And then check that out. Cool. I already have one, so I'm just going to delete that. Bam, we got our bass drop done. Let's move on to the reverse snare now. So that sounds like this. It's best to put these right in front of a snare hit, so it ends with an actual snare hit. So that way it's kind of like a plateau. Anyway, let me show you how to do that. I'm using Superior Drummer. That's my go-to for all of my drumming needs. It's an incredible piece of software. I'm using Superior Drummer 2. They've released a new one since then. I'm just gonna make a new MIDI track, and I'm just gonna, bam, snare, highest velocity you can go, 127. And that's it. That's not actually it. Now we have to bounce it. So pretty much we want to change this from a MIDI message to a waveform. That way we can edit it like an audio file. Not like an audio file, we can edit an audio file. So I'm going to bounce this track, bounce it in place. Let's name it Rev Snare. And let's see, new track, we can leave the source. Bypass effects plugins. If you want, that way it's a dry signal as opposed to any sort of effects that you can see I have a compressor on. Include audio tail, yes. Include audio tail in region, yes. Normalize, no. Cool, that's gonna bounce. Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. It looks like I selected all of my regions, so it's gonna bounce my entire drum project. All right, now that that's done, we can delete it and do it to just the snare. So make sure, important, make sure none of your other stuff is selected, just this region is selected. Bounce it, same parameters, whatever rev snare is gonna be. Cool, got it. We're just gonna delete that MIDI region, we don't have a use for it anymore. We're gonna edit this waveform. So before we can do that, open up your preferences in Logic. And again, this will work in any DAW. I just use Logic as my main, so select all of these because you want them there. Logic hides them from you so that you can have, I guess, more streamlined workflow. There's less clutter and less buttons, but I find having them selected and enabling all of these extra features will allow you to stumble upon something you don't know and figure out what it is, and then be able to use it in the future. So once all of these are selected, you can exit, and then open up the little scissor editor here, or you can just press the E key. Woohoo, shortcuts. Cool. So right now, here's our waveform. Make sure that it's selected. Make sure you're on File as well, and just hit reverse under Functions. And look at that, like magic. And that's what that sounds like. So now that you have that, you can throw it wherever you want in the mix. I suggest putting it right in front of a snare hit, so that way it kind of does like a little plateau thing, like a whoosh, you know? Cool. I'm gonna delete that because I already have a few in the other parts of my mix. And now I'm gonna show you how to do that little ramped speed up effect. So change your secondary cursor to a fade tool and take whatever file you want to affect. I'm just going to choose this one because whatever. Using the command key to enable your secondary cursor, just drag a fade and make sure that you have speed up selected instead of fade. And then that'll sound like this. And then you can change the parameters like this, so it's faster in the beginning or slower in the beginning. And then, you know, you can also do this in a slow down feature. So if you drag from the end of the file backwards, and that can prove itself to be useful in some of your mixes. All right, so next we're gonna do the boom. It's just a kick and a tom, bounced from a MIDI message to a waveform, just like we did with the snare hit. And that's gonna sound like this. You're probably thinking, Hayden, that doesn't sound at all like a kick and a tom. Well, you got me there. I did a little bit of editing. So I added a channel EQ. I put a low pass at 120. A low pass pretty much means it cuts out all of the higher frequencies. It passes over the lows. And I put a low shelf at around 120. So that means it boosts all the lows. And now you can do it with whatever numbers you'd like. I just suggest cutting out some of the highs and boosting some of the lows. In audio, everything sounds different. It depends on what kick sample you're using, or if you're using a real kick, whatever. So here it is without any effects. Then you add the EQ and a little bit of reverb, and sounds pretty good to me. And that's it. Your track should now have all the punch that it needs. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you'd like to learn next, and subscribe so that you can be the first to see it. And hey, you're already here, you may as well leave a like. What have I become?